Hi, everyone. Welcome to Subscribe to Open, Advancing Sustainable Open Access in the Biosciences. My name is Christine Orr, and I'm the Senior Director of Business and Community Development here at BioOne. First, a little bit of housekeeping. This session is being recorded, and you will receive a copy afterwards. If you would like to use closed captioning, there is a closed captioning button to be activated at the bottom of your screen to support accessibility. And finally, we've got a Q&A box as well. We'll be monitoring that for your questions, and we'll have dedicated Q&A time at the end. So today we're going to talk about Subscribe to Open, which is a conditional open access publishing model grounded in the core values of sustainability and equity. We're going to talk about why it fits BioOne's mission, how it supports the shared values of our publisher and library communities, and how our S2O pilot, which will run from 2026 to 2028, will work for both our library and publishing partners. Our pilot includes 71 titles from 54 publishers, which is the largest number of publishers represented under an S2O offer to date. So we wanted to bring you this very special opportunity to meet some of those publishers who have joined this groundbreaking effort and also meet some of our librarians who've been so supportive. So as we were planning this session, I got the best out of office message from Dr. Lucy Kerhulis, and she's one of our panelists today. She is an associate professor of forest physiology at Cal Poly Humboldt, and she's the editor-in-chief of Northwest Science. And her message just said, camping in the field this week. I am doing field research. And it was a perfect reminder of the particular sector of the biosciences, ecological and environmental sciences that we support here at BioOne. These are folks who have a front row seat to the natural environment, its species, and many changes. And it was another reminder that the scientists who are editors of BioOne community journals are not only publishers, but they're wearing the hats of field biologists, teaching professors, and very often all three. So in addition to Lucy, we're going to meet Dr. Taryn Grant, and he's a herpetologist at the University of Sao Paulo and the editor-in-chief of the South American Journal of Herpetology, which is the first journal from Brazil to be offered under an S2O model. We're also welcoming Dr. Benjamin Van Schmidt, who's a plant taxonomist and editor-in-chief of the Caribbean Journal of Science. And I'm also really excited, as I said, to welcome two longtime members of our library community. Robin Sin is coming to us from Iowa State University, and Jill Emery up early on the West Coast, Portland State University, to talk about assessing the value of S2O collections. And last, but certainly not least, I am joined by Meredith Pond, who is our publisher and partnerships manager, who worked absolutely tirelessly over the past year with our publisher community to gain their participation in this pilot. And I'm so delighted to have everyone with us today. So to talk about why we're doing this and why we're doing this now, BioOne was founded in 1999 by nonprofit scientific publishers and librarians with the mission of making scientific research more accessible and offering a sustainable nonprofit lane in scholarly communications. And since that time, we've been delivering content under primarily a subscription model. We've been aggregating over 200 titles from over 150 independent nonprofit publishers into BioOne Complete, which most of you know. And this database is accessed by over 3,500 institutions around the globe. And under the model, with subscription funds flowing in, we've been able to return over $78 million in revenues to our publishing partners. So reinvesting those precious library funds right back into scientific communities and allowing them to sustain their research activities and, crucially, remain independent and non-commercial. And you'll hear more about that from the publishers themselves in a few minutes. So over time, of course, both our publishers and libraries wanted to see greater openness of science. And our publishers, of course, want to deliver their content to as wide an audience as possible, maximizing the impact of their important work. And OA models, of course, make that possible. And indeed, annual reviews, IWA, and other members of, I must mention, the absolutely excellent Subscribe to Open community of practice have seen significant increases in the use of open content, and that many more types of readers access the content compared to when it was gated and limited primarily to academia. So our libraries also seek to support open access for lots of different reasons. And in speaking with Jill, she mentioned how Portland State has as part of their mission to support the city and not only benefit the students and researchers who are on campus. So in finding an open access solution, again, we always wanted to increase the availability of OA content, but needed to do so sustainably. We wanted to remain true to our collaborative nature and leverage the established strength of BioOne for the benefit of as many of our partners as possible, rather than to find a journal by journal solution. Also, models that relied on APCs didn't really support our value of equity. It would introduce new inequity and fees for authors and libraries, which really was a non-starter and didn't really sit well with us. So with that, I'm going to go on to the next slide and talk about how this particular implementation of S2O supports our values, particularly of sustainability. And why is that the core value that we're talking about today? Simply put, we needed to safeguard the financial sustainability of both our publishers and our library partners so that they can continue to live their missions of advancing science and scholarship. So by introducing this particular model, we feel have the ability to preserve that delicate balance for those two primary communities. Under S2O, in a nutshell, libraries will continue to subscribe to BioOne Complete, and will continue to invest in that nonprofit and scholarly community. And our publishers, again, are nonprofit societies, publishers, university presses, and museums. So our pricing model will continue to be equitably tiered, keeping it affordable for all kinds of institutions and with no new fees like APCs. So simple annual increase applies, which really important for our library partners, gives them budget predictability, preserves that low cost per title that our aggregation model has always supported, and low cost per title and low cost per download. And we're proud to be very transparent. And in the graph you see on the right, and share how we use those subscription funds. Where do they go? As you can see, our biggest cost center, if you will, biggest place those revenues go, is right back into our publisher community via publisher royalties. And this S2O model maintains our ability to keep doing both of those things. So in lots of ways, it's business as usual, but with one major difference. If we're able to achieve our sustainability target, we'll be able to open access to some additional content from 54 of our partners and transforming our traditional subscription model into an even greater good. And with that and more details, I want to hand it over to Meredith.
Thank you, Christine. It's great to be here with you all today. And I want to thank our speakers as well for taking the time to join us. I'm going to zoom out a bit and talk about Subscribe to Open generally, and then specifically how our pilot will operate at BioOne. So even though most of us have likely come to this webinar with some understanding of how S2O works, I think it bears repeating how the model actually functions. The Subscribe to Open model, as is stated right in the name, is a subscription model. Under Subscribe to Open, we are depending, as we always have, on continued support from our library subscribers who have kept our independent society publishers sustainable since 1999. And what Subscribe to Open says is that if we are able to maintain our annual revenue requirements, as Christine mentioned, and this offer will recur for 3 years, beginning in 2026, so we'll be checking in each year. If we have met that threshold, we will open the current year's volume. So everything in volume year 2026 for our S2O titles will be made open access. If we do not hit our renewal target, all of the gated titles will remain gated and everything will be as it always has been. And of course, in that scenario, we would your subscribers would continue to maintain access to all paywalled content as they always have. And I'll move to the next slide. So now let's turn to how S2O will work at BioOne. BioOne Complete will continue to be a mixed model collection of 219 total titles, 71 of which are now S2O, with the majority of the rest remaining fully gated and a handful of gold OA titles. We're very proud of the turnout for our pilot and for the trust that our publishers have put in us to join us on this journey with their pioneering spirit. We have the first S2O publishers ever from Brazil, Japan, Kenya, and China. So we're very excited about that. The key concept to understand here is that for libraries, there are exclusive benefits to subscribing to BioOne that are only enhanced by the addition of our S2O pilot. And this is important for publishers to hear as well, who may be concerned about membership revenue when access to the journal is a benefit of membership. Remember, the back file of the S2O titles remains gated. So we are talking about 1 to 3 years of potential open access for 71 titles, which is wonderful and crucial. We're very proud to be reducing inequities in open access and disseminating this critical research, especially in areas of underfunded science. At the same time, keep in mind, a subscription to BioOne includes guaranteed access to these S2O articles plus access to 185,000 backfile articles going back to 1996. So because we are providing a valuable private benefit to our libraries and institutions, we're not concerned about free writing for this reason, and neither are we concerned that we are doing a disservice in any way to our library partners who have paid for access to the aggregation. In fact, we see S2O as a valuable addition to our current offering. We believe this is the best of both worlds for both our customer base and our societies whose authors simply don't have the ability to pay for expensive APCs. The societies can't afford to pay to publish in a gold OA system. That simply is not realistic for them. And I'll go to the next slide. Okay, so let's talk about what actually happens if we meet our goal. If we are successful, access will be opened for all 71 titles, just the 2026 volume. Importantly, since many of our titles participate in our early online publishing program, anything submitted in advance of 2026, so for example, if content was submitted at the end of this year for next year, it will be made OA retroactively. All articles will have a CC BY license displayed in the metadata, and open access will be in perpetuity. I get asked frequently if the access will go back to being gated during a year where S2O is not successful or for any reason, and the answer is no. Everything that is made OA during the S2O pilot will remain open forever. And again, this offer recurs each year of our 3-year pilot, so the same thing will happen in 2027 and 2028. And I think that's enough of the mechanics for me. I'm now pleased to introduce my first S2O publisher speaker, Taryn Grant, EIC of South American Journal of Herpetology, and a member of our BioOne Board of Directors. Taryn, could you please introduce yourself? And then I'm going to ask you a couple questions.
Sure. Thanks, Meredith. It's great to be here with everyone. So I'm Taryn Grant. I'm, as Meredith said, I'm the editor-in-chief of the South American Journal of Herpetology. I'm also a full professor at the University of Sao Paulo in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and I work with frogs. I play with frogs.
Oh, we love it. Well, speaking of frogs, I would love to hear how you imagine this OA content impacting public good, and specifically in your field, in the biosciences, herpetology. How do you see this research downstreaming to affect policy outcomes, public awareness, new research?
Sure. So the most immediate impact, I guess, on our journal is going to be that we expect to have, increased citation statistics. That happens across the board when people go to open access. But more important than that, we know that our journal is read by a lot of people outside of academia. So policymakers and environmental consultancy is huge. I have a sort of anecdotal example of this. A couple of years ago, we published a really important monograph on the tadpoles of a particular region of Brazil. There's a lot of mining in this region. And the citations for that article have been pretty mediocre. It's a really big article, and one would hope that we get a lot of citations from it. And it really hasn't taken off in terms of citations. But in terms of downloads, it's been downloaded thousands and thousands of times. The first year that it was out, it was downloaded over 16,000 times, which for our journal is a lot. And every year since then, I guess it's been 3 years now, I think, that it's been out, and it continues to be downloaded over 1,000 times per year. That is not translating into citations because the people that are doing the downloading aren't people that publish papers. They're people that are in government. They're people that are doing environmental consultancy, as I said. And so I expect that once we go to open access, that will just explode even more. I mean, these are people that somehow have to kind of finagle their way into an academic account so they can get the access to it. And once it's open access, I expect that to just explode. And not only here in Brazil, but outside of Brazil. So we publish a lot of papers from other countries as well, and we know we're accessed by them.
That's so encouraging to think about the impact that these papers could have on policy, especially the times that we're living in. Can you talk a bit about the impact that the shared proceeds from BioOne have on your society, particularly as a publisher in Brazil?
Yeah, simply put, if we didn't have the royalties, I'm not exaggerating, if we didn't have the royalties from our arrangement with BioOne, not only would our journal not exist, but our society would not exist, at least not in the way that it is now. A lot of societies, I think, it's almost universal, except for the really big ones, the chemical society, things like that. They're really, really big with hundreds of thousands of members. The smaller societies like ours. So I represent the Brazilian Society for Pathology. We had a lot of members when people had to obtain the articles by getting the journal through the mail. And so membership gave you that for free. And so we'll go, ooh, we'll sign up for this, and they'll pay their annual subscriptions or their annual membership fees. Once they were able to get journal content online, that dried up completely. So we offer a discount to people to come to our conferences or congresses if they're members. And so we see a peak in membership right before the Congress, so they can get a discounted rate. But basically, we lost our revenue almost completely from membership. Luckily, this all coincided with when we joined BioOne. And so right from the very beginning, we've had those royalties coming in. And those royalties they sustain the journal. That's the number one expense of our society, is publishing the journal, but that's also our number one revenue for the society. So it more than pays off. And it also supports all of the activities that our society does. So all the workshops that we put on, all the we do workshops around Brazil. When we put on our big Congress, we just had a Congress right now in Manaus about 3 weeks ago with over 1,000 participants. So herpetology is big in Brazil. And we also get participants from other countries around the world. We not only were we able to fund putting on that Congress, but we were also able to provide grants for especially student participants who would otherwise not be able to fly to Manaus and participate in it. So that covers everyone from students who couldn't afford it to single moms. We had a special grant for that a few years ago as well, for single moms, people to attend, minority groups as well. So this really funds all of our activities, every single aspect of what we do. And it's allowed us as well to not charge people to publish in the journal, which has been really important. So not only do we not charge an APC, we've never had page charges. We've never charged people that are not members. We've never had that difference. It's always been sort of a core value of the journal since it was founded, that it would allow, what we wanted to do is publish quality research that is important to our community. And really, it's BioOne's royalties have allowed that to happen. And with moving into this STO model, that allows us to just expand that much more and have hopefully some security in the future in this very difficult time. So.
Thank you, Taryn. That's so moving to hear that. And it's reminding me also that I should mention that this is exactly, what the pilot was intended to do, just to be appropriate for those publishers that are reliant solely on BioOne funds, that are exclusive to BioOne. So thank you for that. It was great to talk to you. I'm gonna now introduce our dedicated out in the field EIC of Northwest Science, Lucy Karhulis. Lucy, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Lucy Karhulis, and I'm an associate professor of forest physiology at Cal Poly Humboldt, so in the northwestern corner of California, where the redwood trees are. And 3 years ago-ish, I took on the editor-in-chief role at Northwest Science, a small regional journal.
Amazing. We have 3 of us on the West Coast today.
Yeah.
When you took on the editorship of Northwest Science, I remember one of your goals was to publish more open access. And I think you wanted to go gold away. That was your goal kind of when you took on the journal, but your organization is dependent on those BioOne funds. So that was a barrier. How does S2O participation further your goal to move to OA?
Yeah, our journal until recently did not offer any open access publication options because as a small society journal, we're really dependent on those Bio1 royalties, and we were really nervous to give those up. So even before S2O kind of was on our radar, we were really wanting to shift to publishing mostly open access, and this was largely kind of to support the mission of our society and advance global knowledge just about the natural world. We really wanted to make scientific research freely accessible to all people. That was really important to our group. And so providing open access to authors and readers was highly important to us. But because of our dependence on those royalties, it was looking like authors would have to pay very high open access article processing charges to make up for that loss in royalty revenues. And given our authorship and the people that we publish, we were really worried that many of our authors wouldn't be able to afford these high fees. And so participation in S2O was kind of like a godsend, giving us this really great opportunity to be able to offer open access publication to our authors, really without any financial risk due to the fact that Bio1 has guaranteed us payment for 3 years, kind of equivalent to our average annual royalty income, which is amazing. And so this approach is really a win for our authors. That their work will be more easily available to the public. It's a win for our readers that scientific knowledge will be freely accessible. And it's a win for our journal that the ability to offer open access publication kind of comes without any financial risks. So it's pretty amazing from our point of view.
Wonderful. Yeah, I know it was very important to our board to insulate our S2O publishers from risk in joining this pilot, and that was a core tenet of how the pilot would function. We know that impact factor is only one metric of success when it comes to journal performance, and it's a pretty elitist metric, so I don't place a ton of emphasis on it. But can you talk about how open volumes might help journal growth overall?
Yeah. So our journal, Northwest Science, is a really small regional journal that is like kind of remarkably interdisciplinary, and it's been in publication since 1927, so almost 100 years. It's really a gem of a journal. However, its readership, author pool, and impact seem fairly limited. And so one of our thoughts with open access publication is that would potentially increase the impact of our journal. So we're really thrilled to be able to offer open access publication because it seems that this approach, sort of in addition to supporting our mission to make scientific knowledge available to wide audiences, will really increase the visibility and impact of our journal and the research that we publish. So we hope that this increased visibility will expand our readership, our author pool, submissions, publications, and ultimately impact.
Amazing. Thank
However
you.
that's measured.
Exactly. And there are multiple ways to measure journal impact. So thank you for covering that. Ben, last but not least, Ben Vanny Smith, EIC of Caribbean Journal of Science. Ben, could you please introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to speak to you. My name is Ben Vanny. I'm a professor of biology at the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez, where I also direct the herbarium, the MAPR herbarium, because I'm a plant taxonomist and systematist. I describe species groups, and do molecular phylogenetics. And I edit the Caribbean Journal of Science. It was kind of languishing, and I had a little bit of previous editing experience. And so the Dean of Arts and Sciences asked me to take it on. And a lot of the things that Karen and Lucy were just saying about how their society really depends on the journal. I was going to say some of those things too, but I don't need to because they've said them. Because they apply to us as well here.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, you've been such a champion of S2O. I remember when we were going back and forth with the contract, you translated our offer into Spanish multiple times with the University of Mayagüez to ensure that you'd be able to join. You've also done a ton of work, as you mentioned, to grow the journal into a healthy journal. So can you talk about how S2O helps you continue that growth, or why it was so important that you join?
I think it was Christine that was talking about how its major mission of Bio1 is sustainability and equity. And I think a lot about the equity aspect of it. I interact with a lot of authors from the Caribbean area, from Latin America, and the opportunity for them to publish in open access is either very limited, or they need to do it as kind of junior collaborators with somebody from another country who somehow can either afford it or is hooked into that. Because I think that open access is, or at least widely distributed publications, are becoming somewhat of lingua franca of communication. And so I really jumped on the opportunity for S2O, looking at it through the eyes of our authors, because I think that for some of them, it will be the first and maybe only time in their careers where they'll be able to publish open access. And also, a lot of them, they're under certain either restrictions or pressures that we don't have in other institutions. For example, that they must publish in a certain type of index journal, or if it's a journal from the United States or something like that, it counts more in their evaluation processes or something like that. And so to be able to make that open access, I view it as kind of extending this privilege, or just like this huge benefit that is otherwise only available to people with budgets that can sustain $1,000 to $3,000 open access fees, to researchers from institutions that don't have that as an annual budget.
Exactly. And that sort of ties into my next question is, I've heard you say it's not about what gets published, it's who gets published. And so I think you've touched on that already. It's very important that we give these authors who otherwise wouldn't be able to publish open access an opportunity to do so in these underfunded areas of science. And I want to also mention, not to cut you off, do you have anything else you want to add about that?
No, that's fine.
I also just wanted to mention that, I know one of the issues that we talked about kind of behind the scenes is that there's sometimes a misconception that, there's some way for you to just, you can just, post a PDF, or, you can sort of do open access or run the journal on your own. And what you mentioned to me was how important the distribution is with BioOne, that you maintain that subscription wide distribution and you're able to go open access, and sort of maintaining that balance through S2O is really important. And I just wanted to say that as well. Yeah.
I think, can I add just one little anecdote?
Yes, please. Yeah.
I'm working on a manuscript right now from authors from Cuba. And one of the reviewer feedbacks was, you need to cite more citations for these little claims that you're making. And it's very standard and very legitimate review requirement, for revision. And when they revise their manuscript, I realized that they probably don't have access to the full internet like we take for granted. And it kind of made me realize that their article in my journal was kind of a bridge between a fairly isolated group of researchers and, just the greater body of publications, because some of the things that they included as references in response to that feedback were very obscure. And I realized that they were getting them in print off of the shelf somewhere, which actually for me is very difficult to find, because I'm just kind of like, I need to correct the literature cited entry for this because it seems kind of strange and it's very difficult to find. And then you kind of realize that just, the reality that they're living in versus the one that they're kind of being able to be brought into. And now it's a continuum from their research area, from their unit to, the whole community, to these, wonderful, ample libraries that are the type of libraries that subscribe to BioOne.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for hammering home that point. And I want to say quickly before I turn it back over to Christine, how much I appreciate all of you joining us today and talking about these things that we don't often hear from our publishers about how BioOne really keeps you all sustainable and keeps you alive. And so we appreciate that. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Christine.
Oh, thanks, everyone. And it is so exciting to hear about everyone's work, the specific kinds of science that you're involved in, and it really brings it home how important this research is and how applicable it is for so many things. So I just love it. So before I turn over to Robin, we did have a question in the chat. I know we have people joining us from all over the world today, and we're so grateful. We've had a question about translation of this, and if you use the closed captioning box at the bottom of the Zoom screen, you will see an arrow that allows you to select your language, and it will do some simultaneous translation for you. So I hope that will be a help to some of our folks who are joining us from around the world. So thank you so much. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Robin Sin.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. So, hello, I'm Robin Sin. I am the Director of Collections and Open Strategies at Iowa State University. And S2O is just a great thing, so I'm just here to kind of toot my little horn about S2O. And next slide, please. So what we're doing right now at Iowa State, which is a public land-grant university. So as Christine mentioned, that Portland State has a mission to support both their university and their city. We have a mission to support our university, the state, and beyond. So we've always had, ever since open access became a thing, we've been trying to support it in whatever way is currently the best way to do so at that point in time. It's changed a lot, as you know. So this past year, last year, fiscal year 25, we spent about 20% of our collections budget on things that are open. That includes 15 read and publish agreements. We have 13 S2O journal agreements. And again, counting is really hard in libraries because of those 13, some are for a single title like demography, but some are for a package like annual reviews, which is 50 some journals. So I decided I wasn't going to count all the journals individually for you. We also support some S2O offers for books. Some of the Knowledge Unlatched packages are kind of an S2O kind of program. Reveal Digital does this for primary source collections. If they get enough money, they open it up. So it's not unusual any longer. Next slide, please. And so while I'm excited about S2O because it is more equitable for authors, as some of the editors were speaking to. There's no giant APC, or even not so giant. It can be giant if you have no money to pay it. So we think that's more, S2O is much more equitable for authors. It's pretty easy for library acquisitions workflow because we're paying an annual fee, and we don't have to track, you know, who is actually currently associated with the university. So we'll cover their APC with those read and publish agreements. It just takes some extra work. And generally, subscriptions are easier on the budget, especially from nonprofit and small regional publishers like BioOne supports. The kind of other side of S2O, it's a little difficult to explain. Conditional aspect can make it difficult to talk to researchers about it, but you know, open access itself isn't the easiest thing to talk about anyway. Also, tracking the different publisher incentives is sometimes difficult for people in my and Jill's positions. It's like, what do we get with which one? But it'll all shake out. We're excited to work with all of the different groups, and especially with BioOne, because BioOne really aligns with the kind of research in agriculture and environmental science that happens here. When Ben was talking about being a plant systematist, taxonomist, I was just looking at one of our research emails, and one of our researchers is being lauded for the number of bamboo species she has identified anew. So this is why we support Bio1. It's in our corner of the research world, and it's open. So thank you all.
Oh, thanks a lot, Robin. And yeah, the conditional aspect of subscribe to open is the thing that makes it different from other open access models. And we do try to be very it's something we spend a lot of time chatting about as well. Because there's so many models out there, and there's a lot of pluses to this, but that is one item that we truly try to be clear about, because it is the thing that differentiates this. With the offer recurring every year, it's open this year. If we hit the target, there we go. So it's something that we try to kind of hit home a lot. So anything we can do to help educate and help make it as clear as possible so that you can communicate to your constituents, we're always open for that. So with that, let me send it over to Jill for what OA looks like at Portland State.
Hi, thank you, Christine. I'm Jill Emery, the Collection Development and Management Librarian at Portland State University. And I just wanted to give a brief overview about our university. We're a mixed undergraduate, graduate, doctoral, large institution where we're classified what was a Carnegie classification of R2 previously. I have $3.9 million as a collections budget, which isn't a significant amount of money given the size of our institution. And I like to say I make miracles happen with this funding. A quarter of this collections budget is spent on various open access initiatives. We have 3 memberships, 8 read and publish agreements, mostly with society publishers, and only 2 big commercial scholarly publishers, and 6 subscribe to open agreements at this point, as well as supporting some of the book initiatives and other kind of one-off initiatives that we try to do either annually or every other year as much as possible. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I really dug into when we started doing this is how then do we evaluate these different agreements and how they're arranged? So for memberships, we primarily look at the publishing outputs more than usage, and we gather our data from our local institutional repository websites. For our read and publish agreements, we evaluate the read usage overall using countermetric reports and using what is called the title report, or the TR report, not the TR_JR1, which is the journal report. And that's the report that most operating systems are set up to easily ingest and pull into your integrated library system to determine cost per use on packages and on journals. The reason why we don't use that for read and publish, and especially for subscribe to open, is those numbers are narrowed only to what is the subscribed content. And if we're paying for an open access component, if part of what we're trying to evaluate is that open access, then we really need to be evaluating these packages or this content for that open access usage locally, as well as for the paywalled usage. And then for transitional agreements, we also add in looking to see how many titles actually flip open, which I think is important, because if what we're trying to do is transform that package to the majority of the titles being open, we want to make sure that's actually happening, or we're going to be having conversations with that publishing entity. Next slide, please. So I wanted to show you what this means in the usage reporting schema. And I'm using annual reviews because that's one of our subscriptions we've had for some time, as Iowa State, as Robin noted, Iowa State does as well. So in looking at this is kind of a screenshot of our usage for our title report, JR1 report. So this is the subscribed or controlled aspects of what's behind the paywall and what our usage is for annual reviews in 2024. And if that is the report I use to calculate cost per use, this cost per use for my institution comes in at about $24 per use. That's a pretty significant cost when we think about it. Next slide, please. However, if I go in and I look at just the title report, that includes not just what is behind the paywall, the controlled access, but what is listed as free to read and what is listed as open. Now the total items requested for that same year jump from 813 to 2,242. That cost per use calculation then becomes $9 per use. That's a significant difference. And I think it's really important for us as librarians to really make sure that we are evaluating these initiatives on the strengths that they provide. What this is showing me is from our IP ranges, what access occurred and how many items were requested, both from paywalled as well as from what is made openly. Now, some people ask, why do you include free to read? Free to read is sometimes coded in these reports, especially for subscribe to open content, as a way to kind of mark what is going to be open access if the threshold is met. And so we want to include that in addition to the open access that is then accomplished and provided at the end of the time frame for the subscribe to open result. So this is just my way of indicating, when entering into this deal, these sorts of deals, sometimes we have to do a bit extra work. And honestly, that's part of what makes systems more equitable. Sometimes you have to do more work for the equity to exist. And we need to consider that as librarians when we're doing our evaluation of content deals, such as subscribe to open. Thank you.
Oh, Jill, thank you so much, and Robin as well. And I really appreciate how both of you touched on, the things that don't have to change under S2O, because it is a model that leverages a lot of existing workflows, existing budget pots and things like that. But there are a few things that we do need to consider when we enter into these kind of arrangements. So I really appreciate you both highlighting that. So Jill, you touched on this a little bit, but both of your universities are spending between 20 and 25% of collection funds on OA resources. And are S2O evaluated a little bit differently from other kinds of OA inclusive models, Robin? Or what other factors are you considering?
There we go, finally unmuted. Well, if you're thinking about it, it's interesting too, because we've actually started dividing up what we're spending our money on in the open category, because there's open content. So S2O and Read and Publish, but Read and Publish also includes, we're paying for publishing services more directly. And then there's support for open infrastructure like DOAJ and things like that. And so we have like little different sets of ways to assess our spending and the use we get from those different items. With the content, with the journals, we use Counter exactly as Jill was describing. And then, but the first and foremost is its alignment with the research and teaching at the university. And then it goes back to cost. We do try to follow the authors. So that's why we do have so many Read and Publish agreements. Plus they were the first out of the gate and that was going to solve everything. And then everyone went, oh, maybe it doesn't solve everything. So we're kind of like trying to figure out, so S2O is kind of our preferred over RNP now, but we're not going to stop any of the RNPs at this point without a giant budget cut or something. Don't wish that on us. But so yeah, it all has to do with where folks are publishing, where they're reading, and trying to support open in general.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. And for both of you, how do you view I think this is great for our publishers to hear. How do you view society and nonprofit publications as part of the overall collections mix when you're evaluating things, or how do they fit in?
I would say for us, they're highly important, in part because we have faculty engaged in some pretty esoteric, niche kind of research areas. And we understand the struggles they have then in sometimes getting that content out to the rest of the world and having it recognized and acknowledged as important work that needs to be supported and forthcoming. So for us, we really want to support society publishing and university publishing first and foremost, because we know that that's where so many of our faculty themselves are coming from, and we want to make sure that they have that avenue and that ability to do that. They're also not necessarily getting top tier grant funding. And certainly now with federal funding being cut to the levels it is, we want to be able to at least give them as much possibility and as many platforms as possible to get their research and their life's work out there and available to the world.
Thanks for saying that, Jill. I really appreciate it. And it's evident from the folks on the call today how dedicated people are to their study species and their fields of research and their communities. It was great to hear Taryn talk about, all of the wonderful things that the Brazilian Society of Herpetology is doing to support that way, it seems like a niche community, but has so much impact for the rest of us as well. So it's really, really exciting. And thank you for saying that. So with that, I wanted to open it up to everyone here on the call. We're going to open the floor for questions. So we've got a few in the Q&A, but please, our Q&A is open, so please add some in there. First, I know we had a lot to talk about today. If any of the panelists have some questions for each other, things that were sparked by our discussion today, we don't often get you all together, so I wanted to see if anyone had any thoughts or any comments on anyone else's presentations. Oh, and everyone can unmute, by the way.
I can just add an observation, I guess, that I had as the three publishers were talking, and that's just how much we have in common. That although we're in different parts of the world, so I'm in Brazil, we've got the US, we've got in Puerto Rico, that we're facing very similar challenges, and our communities are facing similar challenges. And we've got people that speak different languages, have different access to funding, and just the importance of BioOne in general with supporting our research and our dissemination of our results, and keeping us alive, I guess, is really what it comes down to, and how S2O will expand for all of us into not just keeping us alive, but allowing us to grow and meet new challenges. So
Thanks.
that was my observation.
Thanks, Taryn. And for everyone here, how do you see libraries and research departments really working together to support the biosciences? We touched on that as we went through, but if anyone has any additional thoughts on that, I'd love to hear.
Well, I guess it just gets back to trying to, complete the circle, so that sometimes it's hard for us inside the library, even on a campus, to know who in the faculty are journal publishers or editors or reviewers. And, we can't take the time to visit every single journal homepage to look at the most recent list of, so it's all about growing conversations on campuses with the library and the different academic departments, and just learning through our subject librarians and other ways to get together how we can help support the journals that our faculty rely on the most.
Yeah, I think
oh yeah, go for it. Go ahead, sorry. No, go,
Oh.
go. You first, go.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just gonna chime in that I think the libraries and publishers working together by buying into things like Subscribe to Open, and how does that support the biosciences? There's like kind of two prongs that I sort of think about, and one is especially for these smaller journals. A lot of times, like the authors are, master's students that are trying to publish their thesis. A lot of times they're kind of first authorships and maybe need a lot more handholding, or can't afford, these high publication fees because they're underfunded as grad students. So I think by having these types of programs, it's supporting the biosciences by helping people kind of get their foot in the door in the publishing world. And working with smaller journals where there might be a little more handholding kind of like through the editing process. And then also just kind of echoing what Taryn had, his example about, a paper being downloaded so many times, but maybe it doesn't have like that many citations in the academic literature. Just by allowing these open access publications, how that can really influence like boots on the ground work in the natural world by making the kind of cutting edge research findings available to people out in the field making decisions about like restoration prescriptions or things like that. So I think it's helping the biosciences kind of via those two avenues, this collaboration and partnership.
Right. Oh, thank you so much, Lucy. That was really good to hear. And we've got a couple of questions in the Q&A, so I wanted to address some of those. One of them is talking about how does BioOne's Subscribe to Open pilot integrate with broader library consortia deals and transformative agreements, such as with large university systems, and how does it account for kind of budget pressures? So let me answer that. We are working together with many library systems on their subscriptions for 2026, and as I mentioned earlier, the fees that will be in place for this S2O pilot are the same fees that folks have always paid for BioOne Complete. As Meredith mentioned, the same guaranteed read benefits will always be in place for these. So, libraries, as they make assessments like Robin and Jill were speaking, the first and foremost is, does the content of BioOne really align with the subject needs of your institution? Has it been part of your collection for a long time? Well, then nothing really needs to change. The fees and the levels will be the same as they were in the past. And because our publishers have committed for 3 years, we often get the question, why a 3-year pilot? That is so we can assess how this goes year by year, so we could gather data and feedback and see about the level of increased reading, increased citations. We want our publishers and us to be able to get sufficient, stable data over a stable cohort of content over the next couple of years. So that means we're also working with our libraries. Many of them have chosen to work with us on a multi-year agreement basis that matches the terms of the pilot, so that they can be assured of budget predictability. They know exactly what titles are in the package, and we're working very heavily with those library partners, as we always have. So I hope that answered the question that was in the chat.
Christine, do you mind if I address one question quickly that's in the Q&A? Yeah, someone asked if this sustainability target is achieved, will authors be charged any additional fees to publish their articles in S2O journals, such as page charges, color charges, or other fees? So I wanted to clarify that we do not charge author fees at BioOne. So 2 things to understand. We leave the decision to charge page charges to cover production costs with our individual publishers. So some don't, like Taryn mentioned, they don't. Northwest Science does have page charges. Many of our journals do have page charges to cover production costs. What was very important that our publishers understand, and they all are on the same page about this, is that they do not charge APCs. There are no open access fees. There may be modest production fees, but no APCs. So just to answer that.
No, it was really, really important. I'm glad that you've mentioned that. And that is one of the things that makes Subscribe to Open different from a transformative or a read and publish deal. Now, again, as an aggregator, we at BioOne is charging only for read access. We don't get involved in that. This is why it's so important that our publishers are independent. They run their own editorial shops, peer review systems and things like that. So that takes place on the publisher side. And the role that Bio1 plays is in global dissemination and in bridging the gap between the publishers and the libraries, bringing this content to the libraries. Okay, so I hope that answered that. Let me see. We've got let's see. Okay. Oh, great. We've got questions answered there. I think that's about it, honestly. I don't have any more questions in this. We do get the question often, why is this for 71 journals rather than the entire aggregation? These are the titles that are exclusive to Bio1. These are the titles that, like Taryn's and Benjamin's and Lucy's, are exclusive to Bio1 and therefore rely exclusively on our funding to support their publishing operations. And they're not available in other places. So we really wanted to, as part of this test, as we said at the top of the meeting, we feel very strongly at Bio1 as part of our ethos that there remain a sustainable nonprofit pathway in the biosciences for publication. And so we wanted to be able to ensure, that's part of the test. That's part of why we're calling this a pilot is, can we, increase access to this content, make more of it open while keeping it financially sustainable. And the pilot as structured will help us assess that. And we're very excited about that. So with that, can I ask for the wrap-up slides again? So I want to thank everybody. We've got just a few more moments. But thank you for everyone, panelists, those who submitted questions. And it was just so nice to spend time with you and hear about what your communities are up to, why your journals are so special, and what sustainability and S2O means for all of you. Again, we believe very strongly in this non-commercial lane for open access. And I wanted to end with a brief recap of all of the next steps. So as we noted before, libraries participate in this pilot simply by subscribing. And we're working now with all of our library and consortia partners around the world on their subscriptions for 2026. We want to thank so many partners like California Digital Library, Orbis Cascade, where Jill is, SURF, Hebus, and others who've already expressed their support, some with the multi-year commitments that we spoke about. For our publishers, you guys are set for right now. They've committed to the pilot for 3 years, so the collection will remain stable. Bio1 is very happy to support you in communicating, announcing your participation in S2O to your communities. And Meredith is always available for questions on that. And as for Bio1, we are really bullish on this. We look forward to communicating the status of the initial year of the S2O offer in Q1 of 2026. And with all of the support we've got here, we feel so positive that it will be a positive outcome in our first year. And we want to thank you all for spending time with us this morning. If you can go to the next slide, it's got our contact information there. And there's also a QR code. We invite you to learn more about the pilot, to see the full list of participating publishers. And there's also a very extensive FAQ that will answer even more questions than we were able to get to today. So I invite you to take a look at that. So again, thank you so much. We are very excited to be launching Subscribe to Open, and we thank you so much for helping to meet this mission together. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.